Welcome to my channel where OP teaches his boss an unforgettable lesson. Our next Reddit post is from a user, so some background. I've been with my current company for over 5 years. It's a medium-sized private company of about 200 employees in the tech industry. I'm not in management, but rather an IC. I've received consistently good performance reviews and have never had any disciplinary action taken against me. I'm well liked by my peers and managers. I also tend to put in a lot of effort into what I do and take pride in it. However, I can admit that I'm probably a bit too trusting of my managers and upper management. On to the story. The first incident happened about 4 months ago. We were pretty slammed at work, so it was unusual for people to stay late to meet a deadline. That's fine. Everyone stayed late, including myself. But around 6 p.m., when most people had packed up and gone home, my manager came up behind me and said, "Hey, could you stay late and help finish this thing? It's urgent." I said sure, and ended up working until 9 p.m. This happened a few more times over the next couple of weeks. I didn't think much of it until one day it happened again, and I looked at my computer's clock and realized that I had been working for almost 7 hours without a break. I was very hungry, but I pushed through. And when I finally went to leave at 8 p.m., there was no one in sight. I had literally been working by myself the entire time. I was annoyed, but I shrugged it off and figured that my manager would make it up to me. Well, he did. 3 days later, it happened again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And yes, I timed it. I was working for 6 to 8 hours straight without a break. I would get a few brief respites where my manager or another coworker would come in to use the office printer, but they would just say, "Still here, huh?" Sorry, and then they would leave again. I even heard someone walk past and say, "Ah, man, still here. Don't forget to punch your time back in so you can get paid for this." I laughed and said, No, it's okay. I'm working for free. Of course, no one responded because no one could see me. Anyway, at around 5:30 one night, my manager walked in and said, "Hey, are you done yet? So let's call it a day." I responded, "Sure," and clocked out. As I was walking out, I turned around and said, "Actually, I'll stay a little longer and finish up that bug fix." He gave me a surprised look and said, "Oh no need. You've worked long enough. You can go home. We'll sort it out tomorrow." I paused and replied, "But I wanted to get it done today." He insisted, so I left. The next morning, I mentioned to my manager that I was confused about what he meant the night before. He replied, "You know how we were talking about how much work we have, and how if everyone pulled their weight, we could have everything done on time? And you said you wanted to get that bug fix done last night, so I told you to go home?" I didn't remember saying that, and it really didn't matter. In retrospect, I shouldn't have taken him at his word. Well, I found out later that I was right. Another manager came by while we were talking and chimed in that it sounded like my manager was assigning work outside of normal business hours. I said, "Well, I'm not complaining, but I was confused why I was sent home." The second manager quickly said something along the lines of, "Yeah, it's not okay to ask someone to work outside of normal business hours without making it clear that it is actually optional and that they get overtime pay if they agree." My manager tried to argue, but the second manager cut him off and said something along the lines of, "I don't want to hear it. It doesn't matter if the employee wants to do it. Can't force them to do it. It's illegal." So my manager dropped it. While all this was going on, I was thinking that it didn't matter anyway, because I was putting in so many hours after 5 p.m. that I was actually losing money by working overtime. I knew that I should have been compensated for these extra hours, but my manager always made sure that I clocked out before leaving. Also, if I stayed late enough, it would cause me to miss the last train home, and I would have to take a more expensive cab instead. So I just stopped clocking in when I stayed late. After this conversation, my manager seemed reluctant to talk to me, and our interactions became purely professional. I wasn't upset, though, because I was just grateful that he was finally respecting my time. Well, a few weeks passed, and one day, I was called into my manager's office. Sitting across from me were both managers that I mentioned earlier. Explained to me that they were concerned about my dedication to the company, since I was putting in the same amount of time as I used to. I assured them that nothing had changed, and that I was still willing to work hard. However, I explained that I had to set limits for the sake of my personal life. They understood, and we parted ways amicably. The next time that I was asked to stay late, I said sure and clocked in. When I finished and went to clock out, I noticed that it was 9 p.m., and I had worked 8 hours straight without a break. I told my manager and he said, "Sorry, let's go ahead and compensate you for this." 2 weeks passed and I was getting sick of having to work 8 hours straight. So the next time that my manager asked me to stay late, I replied, "Sure, but only until X time. Otherwise, I won't be able to focus and I'd rather come in early tomorrow." He agreed. This cycle continued for a while, and I eventually set my limit to 7 p.m. at this point. It was clear to me that my manager was trying to take advantage of me. Even though he was paying me overtime for these hours, I felt like I was being taken advantage of, and it was becoming a pattern. I also realized that my manager was using guilt to try to make me work. For example, he would say things like, "This has to get done today, otherwise the client will be upset," or "Do I ain't you care about the success of this project?" I know you do. Then pull your weight. So I decided to start calling out sick on the days that I was supposed to work late. Whenever this happened, I would send a quick email saying that I was unfeeling well and that I would not be coming in. I knew that this was petty, but I couldn't help it. Wasn't that bad though, because I could afford to take a hit to my stats for a month or two. Well, after a month of this, I decided that it was time to stop being a coward and stand up for myself. I started writing down all of the times that I was asked to work late and how many minutes I worked. I sent all of this data to payroll and asked them to calculate my overtime pay. I knew that according to the law, I should have been compensated for this work, but I had a feeling that my manager might have tampered with my hours. Sure enough, my manager had only compensated me for the hours that he explicitly told me to stay late. All of the other hours that I worked late, he had either forgotten or straight up lied about. He'd even lied about the date a few times. What a monster. I handed this information over to HR, and all I asked was for them to double-check the numbers. I also requested that they look over my emails with my manager to verify the dates and times. I knew that my manager had it coming, but I didn't expect HR to move so quickly. Within a week, he received a written warning, and the company began investigating all of the other managers. Not bad for a guy who took the initiative. As far as I know, my manager was the only one who was disciplined, because he was the only one who did this often and on record. So yeah, I guess that's my story. My manager still works at the company, but I haven't spoken to him since. He has a bit of a shell of his former self, and he tries his best to stay out of the spotlight. I wonder what kind of thoughts run through his head when he thinks about what he did. Anyway, thank you for listening, and please let me know what you think. Now, Ope says that he's not usually a confrontational person, but I think that's exactly what was needed in this situation. I mean, Ope is young. He needs to learn that just because his manager is nice to him now, that doesn't mean that he's always going to be. And sometimes you have to be a jerk to get what you deserve. And Opie finally learned that when he stopped putting up with this BS and started standing up for himself, he not only got his overtime pay, but his manager was also reprimanded and is probably looking at OP like he is some kind of hero because he exposed this manager's behavior to the company / malicious compliance. And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.